In order to understand minor key chord functions, first we need to know where minor key chords come from. It all begins with the minor scale, or more accurately, the natural minor scale. There are actually 3 minor scales. When someone refers to minor, they're usually talking about the natural minor scale. The easiest way to think about the minor scale is in relation to the major scale. If the major scale has the degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, then the minor scale has the degrees 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6 and flat 7. This means that there are 3 notes of difference. For example, the C major scale has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A and B. So the C minor scale has the notes C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat and B flat. You can use these minor scale notes to create chords, which make up the minor key. This is done in a really simple process. You start on one note, skip a note, and then skip another note. This gives you 3 notes, which when played together, create a 3-note chord. These are also known as triads. Chords which are created purely from the notes of a single scale like this are called diatonic. For example, if we start on the first note of the C minor scale, C, then skip a note, we get to E flat. Then skip another note and we end up on G. The notes C, E flat and G create a C minor chord. Then you move on to the next note, D, and repeat the process. This gives you the notes D, F and A flat. These are the notes in the D diminished chord, which is the second chord in the key. If you do this for each of the notes in the C minor scale, then you end up with the following 7 chords: C minor, D diminished, E flat major, F minor, G minor, A flat major and B flat major. These are the diatonic chords in the key of C minor. You can take this process and repeat for every note of any minor scale. The end result is always 7 chords. Each chord has one of the scale degrees as a root note. These 7 chords are your diatonic chords for that minor key. The most common way to show these chords is with Roman numerals, taken from the scale degree of each chord's root note. Uppercase is used for major chords, lowercase for minor chords, and lowercase with a small circle or degree above it for diminished chords. The main thing to remember here is the order of the chord types: minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major, major. It's worth noting something you might encounter with minor key Roman numerals. Right at the beginning, we use the major scale as the point of reference to then create the minor scale. This is then reflected in the Roman numerals for the key. This system is useful because you just need to know the major key chords to then work out your chords in your chosen minor key. But sometimes you will see minor key chords written like this. This is where they are only referring to the scale they are written from, not the major scale. As such, you can see that the major chords in the key don't have a flat symbol next to them. This is fine if you know what scale is being referred to, but it becomes more difficult if you don't have this information. If you've watched any of my earlier videos on this channel, you might have seen me use this system. For this video and future videos, I'll use the major referential system to avoid confusion. The problem many new songwriters have is thinking about how all of these chords can work together. When they are written out in a row of numerals, they can become detached from the way that they are used in reality. In order to understand the function of these and all of the other minor key chords, I've developed a simple concept called the chord city system. By associating each chord with a place or building in a city, we can think about the purpose of each chord and also how it interacts with the other chords around it. With that in mind, let's start to build the minor key chord city. Minor keys have a sad, dark melancholy about them, but in the right light they can reveal something a little less frightening. The first source of this darkness, and the most important chord in minor keys, is the 1 chord. This chord is also known as the tonic. It's the home base of the minor key, so as you'd expect, it uses a minor chord. Using the 1 tonic chord as the home for a song will create the sad and somber sound most people would associate with minor chords. For example, listen to this progression in the key of C minor that starts and ends with the 1 chord C minor. Pay attention to the dark stability that this chord brings. I'm going to represent the 1 chord with a haunted house on a hill in the chord city. This will help you to remember its role as the home chord, with its stability but also its darkness. If we take the chords in Roman numeral order, then the next choice is the 2 diminished chord. If you're familiar with major keys, you'll know that diatonic diminished chords are not used much in major key progressions. If you're not up to speed with major keys, I'll link a video at the end of this one to help. Although still the least used of the 7 diatonic chords, the 2 diminished chord can be found a bit more in songs compared to major keys. Like all diminished chords, it has a tense, dissonant sound. This can be useful before moving back to the 1 chord for some dark resolution. Have a listen to this in the following example in the key of C minor, moving from C minor to D diminished and back. This movement has an old-fashioned feel. As such, I'll put it in the classic icon of horror, a badly drawn bat. I'll put this next to the Haunted House of 1 to show their closeness. The next chord in minor keys is an interesting one, the flat 3 chord. Not only is the flat 3 the first major chord we're looking at, it's also the happiest and brightest of the major chords. This is despite the chord sharing 2 notes in common with the minor 1 tonic chord. Have a listen to it in action here as the E flat major chord, played after the C minor chord in the key of C minor. There's a reason for this brightness which can be a problem for keeping the minor feel. If you hang out on the flat 3 for too long, it can start to draw the ear towards it. Without reinforcing the minor 1 chord as the tonic, the flat 3 takes over and establishes itself as the new major tonic. This is due to something called relativity. Look at these chords. Do they look familiar? These are the diatonic chords in the key of E flat major. And look who's there as the 1 tonic chord, E flat major, which as you know is the flat 3 chord from our example key of C minor. This explains why flat 3 can start to take over in minor key songs. This doesn't mean you shouldn't use it, as it provides a nice bright sound to otherwise dark minor keys. But just be cautious with it if you want to be strictly in minor. As such, I'll draw it as a nice welcoming house at the bottom of the hill. Think of it like a kind friend's house. It's great to visit, but the longer you are there, the more tempting it can be to stay. If you've seen my major key chord city video, you can think of this like a bridge between the two. It's the same thing I used to represent the 1 tonic chord in that video. Next up is another minor chord, the 4 chord. 4 is probably the least exciting or remarkable of the minor key chords. As a minor chord, it brings some of the expected sadness, but it's not overwhelming. As such, it works hand in glove with the 1 tonic chord to provide a wash of minor emotion. Have a listen to this C minor key example to get a feel for the minor 4. Because it's so closely paired with the minor 1, I'm going to represent it with a full moon rising above the haunted house in a familiar horror combo. Next up is our third and final minor chord, the 5 chord. The minor 5 chord is probably the saddest chord in minor keys. It feels somber and complements the 1 chord to really bring the gloom. Listen to it at work in this C minor key example. It's worth noting that you will often see the 5 chord played as a major chord. The reasons for this are beyond the scope of this video, but to give you an idea of the sound, here it is again in the key of C minor. Because of the sadness of the minor 5, I'll display it with a graveyard next door to the haunted house of 1. And if you wanted to think about the major 5, you could imagine someone digging up the graves and building a new building on top. But be warned, we've all heard tales of disturbing ancient burial grounds. We've got 2 major chords to round out the minor key now. The first of these is flat 6. Flat 6 isn't as bright as flat 3, but this is no bad thing. It brings some mystery and power to the minor key city. Listen to it in action now. I'm going to represent this with the source of much joy and wonder, the pub. I'll put it in the bottom right of the map with a pint glass. Cheers. The final major chord is flat 7. This is a confident and useful major chord. It's sometimes known as the backdoor chord because it leads nicely back to the minor 1 tonic chord. Have a listen to it now. Due to its optimistic role, I'm going to imagine this like a beautiful flower garden in front of the imposing haunted house. I've shown you a great way to understand minor key chord functions, but they are so closely related to major key chords that you need to know about both to become a better songwriter? I've created a video that will walk you through the major key chord city. Watch that now to navigate both major and minor key songs.